Welcome to another episode of Rondo, episode 5 this time around. I'm always joined by my guy, Josh Parrish. I'm Ryan. And Josh, before we kick off today, I think I deserve some congratulations actually, because in FIFA career mode, I'm with Wigan. I took them from League One all the way to the Premier League, and in my latest season, completed the quadruple, believe it or not.
Oof.
The league title, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, and the Champions League. But that's not what I deserve the congratulations for. Barcelona offered me the job. I took it after what I feel I've achieved everything I could at Wigan. And now at the new camp. Post-Messi, we'll see how we go.
Your regular Roberto Martinez over there. Latics legend. I should tell my Wigan supporting friend. Believe it or not, Nick Debano from FNR actually supports Wigan. So there you go. He'll be delighted.
Tell him next time he puts in an order for a Wigan kit, sign me up for one. I'm super down to add one to my collection. But
well, congratulations, and I guess anything to not talk about the tipping.
Yes, we'll get to the tipping soon, Josh. You jumped the gun because the first thing I want to talk about today is obviously I'm wearing the United kit, but it has pained me. Thank you. It is very nice.
It's nice. I love the pink trim. I have to say the kits have improved recently.
Yeah, and if anything about the club that has been good are the kits and maybe the signings, but the performances on the pitch have not been. I said to my dad, I woke up the next day and I said to Dad, watching Manchester United is like going to my favorite restaurant and then they shit in my food. It's not a good analogy, but it's a very upfront one, which is fucking terrible. That performance against Aston Villa was just horrible. I hated watching every second of it. And my question to you to kick off is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer good enough? And I want to preface it with my own thoughts because watching the game, 4-3-3 is his formation. He goes with that every time we play. But Aston Villa was a good kind of example of someone that, to me, when things aren't working, doesn't have a plan B, doesn't know how to adapt and tweak it. And it felt like we just kept forcing that formation.
I wonder where the plan to accommodate Pogba and Bruno in a 4-3-3 went. That seemed to be all the talk earlier in the season, and it didn't make sense to me at the time, and it obviously doesn't make sense to Ole now because he hasn't used it. It's either Pogba playing deep, or more often Pogba playing as a winger, coming inside with sort of less defensive responsibility, which works well for Paul Pogba. I'm not sure if it works well for the rest of the team because it means, as we know, our friend Fred takes up one of the midfield spots, and you know my thoughts on his performances. But you know what?
Can I read you a text?
Go on.
I want to read you a text real quick. So, you know, friend of the show, Yaz, who is usually your nemesis in these kind of situations, sent me a text, and it just reads 4 words. At 10 p.m. Fred is so shit.
I mean,
and then,
you know, yeah.
And then at 11:28 p.m. Fred, why is he playing? So I think you guys are on the same page there.
I'm glad to have found some common ground with Yaz at last. Fantastic. But going back to the question of Ole, I think the reason why, as United fans, we harp on about individual performances and pick one weak link in the starting 11 to rag on as the problem for all of United's failings is that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, as a coach, is way too reliant on individual performances to carry him. And that's why I think he is not a good enough manager. And I've drawn up a bit of a plus-minus chart, Ryan, about Ole's strengths and weaknesses. I've tried to be objective about this.
Good.
But on the plus side, he is popular with the players. They seem to respect him. They seem to like him. There are very few stories of dressing room fallouts. He doesn't seem to rub people up the wrong way. He seems to be able to convince players to sign from other clubs, sometimes, as in the case with Donny van der Beek, with ostensibly false promises. But anyway, he's popular with the players. His playing experience at United makes him, among some quarters, especially the match-going fans, I suspect a sentimental favourite. And his media handling tends to be pretty good. He tends to be able to manipulate the narrative in the press to suit what he wants to talk about, even if it is complaining about referees a lot of the time, which I don't particularly like. But on the minus side, the money United have spent is astronomical. You compare it to Liverpool in terms of net spend, And Jurgen Klopp's basically been working on a zero net budget for several years. Obviously, Michael Edwards at Liverpool deserves a lot of credit for how much they've been able to do with limited resources as well. But, you know, the signings that they've made in terms of good business outweigh United's reckless spending. His tactical acumen and his in-game management, I believe, leave a lot to be desired, and his very poor, almost 50% loss record in European games shows that at the highest level, he can't really adapt in-game and continually makes poor decisions with his substitutes. And we come back to the theme I mentioned earlier, reliant on individual performances for success. And that doesn't scream great manager to me. That screams adequate manager who isn't quite good enough to compete at the top level of European football. And I don't think he's good enough for United. I think he's good enough to keep his job for a little while longer. But eventually, especially with the added pressure of Ronaldo's arrival and the failure to compete and win trophies, although United have made some strides and strengthened their squad during his time in charge, I don't think he will be the man to bring United back to the top. I think somebody else will.
I think it's frustrating as a United fan because we've been sold nostalgia with his arrival back, and I think about how giddy I was when we beat PSG, when Rashford hit that penalty, you know, and we're constantly served up the past, rebadged as the present, and you know the Ronaldo signing is one. I'm gonna upset Yaz, but I can't see how we've become better with Ronaldo sitting up top. You know, and I was as gassed as anyone when he came back. But I think that it's made us very we've just focused on him, getting him the ball and playing to his strengths, and we've kind of lost, I think, that dynamic movement, that overlapping play, the pressure from the front. I feel sometimes Bruno Fernandes has to compensate for Ronaldo's lack of movement. And I know that that's going to upset a few people, but I think that at some point, nostalgia and rebadging the previous successes is going to run out in terms of legs with fans. For me, watching in that Aston Villa game, that 4-3-3 clearly wasn't working. You know, we weren't creating chances, but the failure to then adapt and work out, then how do you shift the cards in your favor was just baffling to me.
There seems to be a real lack of a plan B, and sometimes the match plans, when he has time to plan for a particular opponent, especially when it's a reactive game plan against a big team, and when plan A works in that department, namely sitting quite deep and playing on the counter-attack, we have had big scalps in big matches. Manchester United has been able to beat most of the big teams in England, including Manchester City a few times. But when plan A doesn't go right, there doesn't seem to be any kind of creativity in the thinking, and United struggle to change games when the tide is going against them. The Ronaldo effect, I think it was clear in the 70th minute of that game against Aston Villa, where there was a beautiful breakaway after a last-ditch challenge, mind you. It came to Bruno Fernandes, amazing pass around the corner to find Mason Greenwood. And we know Mason Greenwood's strength is he gets shots away and he shoots early and he hits the corners, especially in those transition situations. But with Ronaldo running on the outside, I think he hesitated because it is Ronaldo and Ronaldo's calling for the ball. And he got caught in two minds and he took too long and he couldn't find space for the shot and he couldn't find space for the pass, and Ronaldo didn't hold his run and ended up being offside. And I think that's the clearest indication of the negative impact of having a player who is so much bigger than the club in the front line, because it constricts the other players from making sometimes necessary selfish decisions in front of goal. And that's partially Ronaldo's fault for the way he behaves on the field and the way he doesn't seem to give much license to his teammates to make their own decisions. But also it's not, because it's his reputation that precedes him. And players end up shrinking and playing within themselves because they're trying to get the ball to him instead of, being themselves. And Mason Greenwood should be taking that shot 10 times out of 10, and he didn't. Yeah. Pondering why Jadon Sancho has ended up in the Carabao Cup 11 and not the Premier League 11. And yes, he hasn't played too well since he's arrived, but I think it's important to think about why that is. And you look at his stats, they are incredible. Like since 2018, only 3 players in Europe's top 5 leagues have been involved in more league goals in terms of goals and assists. That's Messi, Mbappe, and Lewandowski. So he's operating in elite company. And I know I've seen a lot of chatter from fans about the Bundesliga tax and how it's easier to score goals and assist goals in the Bundesliga. But if it was so easy, why is no one except Lewandowski putting up numbers like he has in the past few years? Yeah. And you look at the movements that Jadon Sancho makes. He doesn't get down the line and cross a whole lot. He doesn't run with the ball for long distances like Mason Greenwood or Marcus Rashford might. His joy comes from combining and playing short, quick little passes with teammates, little 1-2s, bounce passes, and getting into goal-scoring positions where he'll either square it or he'll score himself. And the lack of those combination options in a team built around individuals is, I think, why Jadon Sancho has very much struggled to fit in with the rest of the group.
And I just don't want Jadon Sancho to end up like Donny van de Beek and the like, kind of just sitting and languishing on the bench. As much as I love that he's at United, sometimes players, you just want to watch them play. And Sancho is one of those players that just...
If you love them, you have to let them go, Ryan.
But moving on to lighter news, because if we've talking a lot about Ronaldo, we've also talking a lot about this other team that we're about to bring up. Arsenal take the North London derby in a very impressive and emphatic performance. I want to know, do you reckon, are Arsenal revitalised?
Yes and no. No with a slice of yes. The main thing that stood out to me in this game was actually Tottenham Hotspur's complete tactical inadequacy, and they basically Nuno. They abandoned the only principle of defensive football that can be applied universally, no matter what strategy you take. You can have a mid block, you can sit deep, you can press high, but compactness is king. You have to have tight spaces between the lines of your defense, midfield, and attack. And Tottenham completely abandoned that core principle that's been around since Arrigo Sacchi basically introduced it in the 90s.
Yeah.
They made spaces for Arsenal to play the ball into that made it look like Arsenal were on the counter-attack, but they were actually building up in possession. They had a front three pressing high and narrow. There was no one marking the overlapping runs of Kieran Tierney. Lucas Moura completely abandoned that kind of marking role.
Yeah.
There was a huge gap between the front line and the midfield, and an even bigger gap between the midfield and the defence. So poor Jaffa Tanganga and Eric Dyer and Davinson Sanchez, like they were just left completely exposed. And Tanganga did make a few bad decisions. On the first goal, he tries to mark Aubameyang instead of continuing to mark his man, which is Smith Rowe, and poorly communicates that switch with Sanchez. But they were really exposed by those Arsenal forwards running at them in wide open spaces after, Dele Alli had completely abandoned his position in the centre of midfield, or Lucas Moura hadn't tracked back. Yeah. So it just didn't make any sense to me. Tottenham completely changed their strategy in the second half and made some substitutions, and Arsenal sat off a bit because they were already 3-0 up, and we got a more even game in the second 45. But the game was already over. A lot of what I saw from Arsenal was very encouraging, but I don't think Tottenham will make it any easier for any other team to score goals this season. Surely Nuno has to do something about this immediately.
I think I have to give you credit, because I was watching the game, and I think there were a few things that impressed me about Arsenal. The first thing was your mention of going to a back three to accommodate Ben White and stuff. I just noticed that when I was watching the game, when they were defending, they came into a back three. Tierney became a left wing back, and Saka kind of dropped in. So I have to give you where credit's due, because they did do that. And Ben
we
White
were talking about that last episode, weren't we? Tomiyasu tucking in as a defensive-minded right back and making a back three. That worked beautifully, I thought. And this is the best Arsenal 11. I don't think there's any conversation about that. It does contain Granit Xhaka, but he's in a perfect situation now, because he's no longer the deepest midfielder, and he's no longer the creative force. If there's one thing that Granit Xhaka has at his disposal, it's a sweet left foot where he can hit accurate passes and great long shots. And if he's got reference points ahead of him, players working really hard off the ball and making themselves free, he will hit the pass straight to their feet. So he just has to play vertically through the lines every time. And I love the switch, as you're talking about, Ryan, with Tomiyasu tucking in, Kieran Tierney pushing high, and essentially Emil Smith-Rowe moves narrow inside from the left wing. Odegaard comes a long way across from his 10 position to play as an inside right, and ends up being 3-2-4-1. And so there's lots of options ahead of the ball when it comes to Granit Xhaka to hit a first-time pass.
And it definitely felt like that when they won the ball back. It was like they just had options all over the park. But I also think that a big change, and sometimes a team might need this, is the Bernd Leno, Aaron Ramsdale switch out. And I wanted to know your thoughts on how can a change like that, for someone that's been the number one goalkeeper for a few seasons in a row now, that can go one of two ways, right? It can upset a team or galvanize a team. And I think from what I saw on the pitch, Ramsdale played really well, but they look galvanized with that change.
It's interesting, and I criticised that transfer because I thought he was being signed as the backup goalkeeper, and it was just too much money to pay for a backup. But maybe his first choice. And it's well documented that they made the wrong decision with the Emi Martinez, Bernd Leno dilemma. Martinez won them an FA Cup. Why didn't they stick with him? I don't know. Horrendous choice. But Leno, I was a little bit defensive of him early in the season because he was making quite a few incredible saves, even when they were getting battered. But that's not the goalkeeper's only job. It's also to be a leader. And I'm not sure if Leno is the kind of vocal leader that Ramsdale actually seems to be. He's got a bit of the Jordan Pickfords about him, where every time he makes a save, he looks incredibly angry that he's been called upon to do his job. And maybe Arsenal need that kind of rocket up them when there's a bit of slack marking going on. They need someone to absolutely dig them out and tell them to do their jobs. And I think having Gabriel back in the centre of defence alongside Ben White really stabilises things as well.
And Thomas Partey as well, back.
Hugely.
He was amazing, breaking up play, like ball retention, moving it on. I thought he nailed it. I thought he was amazing. But
taking responsibility away from Xhaka defensively, while the players ahead of Xhaka take responsibility away from him creatively, and he isn't asked to do too much. And that's where Xhaka can actually be a functional part of Arsenal's midfield. And that's the way I saw them play in this game. I don't know whether they'll get as much joy against other teams who don't allow them the wide open spaces to break into after the first line of the press.
And it'll definitely be viewed as a big moment in Arteta's career. Obviously, the start, really rocky, didn't look great. They've stabilised 3 wins on the bounce now, but to your point, it's how they're going from here. Not all teams are going to set up like Tottenham, and not all teams are going to have the struggles like Tottenham. Harry Kane doesn't look like he's at all loving life. On that, there was a moment in the game, and I think it was actually Saka's goal. It must have been the third goal, where thanks to a forward run from midfield, and the ball being back with Kane, there ended up being 4 Tottenham players stood on the edge of Arsenal's penalty area, and Harry Kane alone on the ball with no options. And he just crumpled like a piece of paper, and Partey stole it from him effortlessly. He just fell over. It was like the Gerrard Demba Ba moment essentially, and Arsenal sprung away, and suddenly it was 3v2, Saka, Partey, Aubameyang, I think, versus Sanchez and Dyer. And Harry Kane, to his credit, did try and run back and slide tackle somebody, but he didn't quite get there. But it was just suicide ball for Tottenham. I don't understand how you could set up like that and expect not to be wiped out in transition. It was crazy, that first half. It was really just self-sabotage. There doesn't seem to be a clear plan. And I think Nuno being the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, maybe 8th choice as manager in the off-season and waiting so long to make that appointment is really coming back to bite them. Well, moving on to a different London team now. A team that you've been big on, Chelsea, who had a big fixture against Manchester City. Going in, Tuchel, 3 games unbeaten against Pep Guardiola, but it's Pep this time that comes out on top, the Gabriel Jesus winner. And I heard something interesting in the fallout of that game, which was Mark Lukaku, handle him and you handle Chelsea. Do the other attacking options on Chelsea's side have to kind of contribute more and get involved more? I watched Timo Werner struggle again. I wasn't very impressed by him, but who else can stand up and help Lukaku out?
Thomas Tuchel keeps trying to make Timo Werner happen, and I don't think Timo Werner is happening. It's interesting the formation he started with in this fixture. He went for 3 in midfield. And traditionally, the benefit of playing N'Golo Kante in your midfield is you no longer need 3 players in your midfield because he performs the defensive duties of 2 players at once. And that's how Leicester won the league, essentially. It was N'Golo Kante enabling them to play 4-4-2 and get away with it in modern football, which is, actually coming back a little bit into vogue lately. But, that's off topic. I don't like Timo Werner being the primary creative player and link between Lukaku and the rest of the team that was just defenders, essentially.
Yeah.
It was way too reactive, and it didn't give City enough to worry about in transition. So they were able to, like a kind of boa constrictor, slowly but surely take control of the game and hem Chelsea into their own penalty area. And it just seemed like a matter of time before a deflection or an own goal or just sheer law of averages from getting the ball in and around the box enough ended up with a Manchester City goal. And that's exactly what happened. I don't think benching Havertz was the right call. I don't think playing Timo Werner was the right call. I don't think changing the formation was the right call. So Guardiola got the better of him this time, but Tuchel is a smart enough coach to tweak things the next time they meet. And, City, they were impressive. It was a statement performance, and they did get the result. I'm still not totally convinced that they have the star power to win the Champions League this year. Very good chance that they'll win the league. But the Champions League, I'm not sure. It might just be beyond them.
And I think the biggest and most obvious hole, the lack of a striker since Kun Aguero left. And there was big talk on, obviously Harry Kane coming in, which never came about. And that's been the tough thing. And watching, I remember watching that first half and noticing like Gabriel Jesus being wide, Phil Foden drifting in and around as a false 9. But it was just obvious that they didn't have anyone that they could look towards and go in the same way that Chelsea look towards Lukaku now as that person that will score you the goals. Do they go for someone in January to fill that gap?
It would be pretty harsh on Gabby Jesus if they did, because he's actually playing quite well at the moment and he's scoring goals, and it is a bit of a vindication season for him after they tried so hard to sign someone in the transfer market and it didn't happen. They were linked with Haaland, they were linked with Vlahovic, they were linked with Ronaldo at the end there. There were a lot of options and they didn't end up going for them. And of course, the Harry Kane saga. I mean, he was the perfect Guardiola forward because he's kind of not a forward. It seems to be an ideological statement that Guardiola wants to win the Champions League without a striker and without a Messi. Because it seems to be like a proving ground for him, like, I don't need a striker to win. But, Spain already won a World Cup inspired by his football, with a false 9. So... yeah. I think that battle's been won, and I don't think he has to be so ideologically resistant to the idea of a player whose only job it is to score goals. Look, if you can sign Erling Haaland, you sign Erling Haaland. I don't know if the timing is right. It means dealing with Mino Raiola, which is an experience that leaves everyone feeling a bit icky, but I would go for it if it's the right player. They are playing well at the moment. Gabby Jesus is having a bit of a return to form. But when he's through one-on-one with the one big chance to win the Champions League final, I don't know if I trust him with his finishing.
And on the flip side of that, we'll end this segment with this question. Having watched the first 6 match days, are Chelsea becoming too reliant on Lukaku to be their main source of goals, even though that's what he was signed for?
I don't think so. I think it was more to do with a lack of support for Lukaku and a lack of options to target other than Lukaku's feet, and he uses his, strength, physicality, and technique to shield the ball and play somebody else in. That can't be your only route to advancing the team up the field is Lukaku's hold-up play. It's funny that they're relying on it so much because at United, Lukaku was ridiculed for his lack of a first touch and his lack of ability to hold up the ball and play others in. But now Chelsea are saying this is our route to success. But I just think it was the 3-5-2 and Werner not really being a creative player. He's more somebody who runs in behind and presses. They need Havertz in the starting 11 or a Ziyech, someone, maybe a Pulisic, they've got so many options in the
So much
squad
talent.
for creative players to fill those inside forward, attacking midfield positions in the 3-4-2-1. So I think they should go back to that, back to the formula that's proven so successful. And then maybe they'll be able to get Lukaku not just with his back to goal, but facing goal where he's most dangerous.
And I think the Timo Werner situation is a bit reminiscent of Lukaku at United. It might not just be the right fit, and he might just need to go to a different club where he could explode into the player that we know he's capable of being. Like, he tore up the Bundesliga.
I mean, we know how important confidence is in football, and he's just in his own head. I mean, he might need a new environment to unlock that. Because there's no one who tries harder than Timo Werner, but sometimes you feel like he's trying too hard. And he's just a bit out of control. He's going too fast all the time. He's like Sonic the Hedgehog. It's like, gotta go fast, gotta go fast. But sometimes you got to take a deep breath and calm yourself down so you can actually perform the action that, your brain's traveling at 1,000,000 miles an hour and, your feet can't keep up.
Well, talking about trying too hard, our Premier League picks, I've been trying way too hard. Because the last 3 match days, especially last one I went, I'm going all logic because I was 2-0 down. And it just so happens that this match day, I've gone 3-0 down to you because, again, the only one I got right was Everton. I tipped Everton to get the dub. So like Timo Werner, I'm wondering, what do I have to do to get one over the line here? And I've gone back to my normal procedure, which is I'm just going off instinct. But it is a tough game to open up the match day. United-Everton, you've gone for a draw. Everton are performing incredibly well under Rafa Benitez.
Way better than I expected. Way better. Doucouré looks a reborn man. I'm so happy for him. He's playing so well. I think he was a bit underrated, and Everton were ridiculed for spending so much money on him, but he's playing really, really well. I don't like the fact that James Rodriguez has gone off to Qatar or whatever. I feel like that relationship between Benitez and James was just predestined to fail after the Madrid experience. So I'm a bit sad about that. But Everton are playing brilliantly and defying expectations. Yeah, I didn't expect him to be a live wire either. I mean, I think it'll probably regress to the mean a little bit. I don't think he's going to keep up this level of performance for the whole year. But certainly they're, as most foreign coaches in the Premier League say, in a good moment right now.
And the next few games coming up, we've kind of tipped the same. Chelsea-Southampton, we've gone Chelsea, Wolves-Newcastle. Wolves finally got a win. Raul Jimenez, congratulations to him, his first goal since the end of 2020. We've gone Burnley in the Burnley-Norwich City game. Norwich cannot get a win, and I
Never
will
tip
not be
Norwich.
getting back on that bandwagon. Leeds United, we've both gone. They will draw at Ellen Road with Watford. They looked all right, I thought, against West Ham, but then West Ham took over the game slowly. But this fixture, Brighton-Arsenal, is an interesting one because Brighton have been performing super well, and if tomorrow they get the win over Crystal Palace, they'll be well placed further up the table than Arsenal.
And they'll take a 4-point lead in the tipping.
And you'll take a 4-point lead. You've already done that. But we've both gone Arsenal here just because, and for me, just because 3 games on the bounce, there's a good feeling, good vibes back, and I think they might just have too much in terms of quality for Brighton.
Yeah, I've gone Arsenal as well. I was just buoyed by the lineup on the weekend, the performance. I don't think they're going to have it all their own way. I think Brighton are going to be a little bit smarter and a little bit more disciplined than Spurs were in that first half. But I've still gone for the Arsenal win. Just, good vibes around the Gunners at the moment, coming off a North London derby. So,
and Tottenham Aston Villa, you've gone Spurs Villa draw. I've backed Villa, who,
nice.
As I've said, every single Rondo were my dark horses for the window. They got it done against United, and I reckon they'll be going in feeling a bit buoyed by that, and with the Tottenham team with their tail between their legs.
Yeah, I think there has to be some sort of reaction. I think we might see a really good Heung-min Son game. I don't know. I went for the draw. I was sitting on the fence because I didn't really know how to predict this one. So the draw is my default every time. I have no idea.
Fair enough. West Ham Brentford. You've gone West Ham win. I know you're big on West Ham this season.
Yeah, home advantage as well. And I always think that Brentford play better against teams who have a go at them. And I don't think West Ham are going to let the handbrake too loose. I think they're going to keep a couple of players at the base of midfield. They're not going to risk too much, and they're not going to give Brentford as much in transition as Liverpool did.
And I've gone a draw in that game because I'm high on Brentford, and I was
Mm-hmm.
impressed. Even though their goals were a bit scrappy, I thought that they'll go into this game knowing that they've come off a big performance, and I'm hoping they can get up again in London. Crystal Palace, we've both gone for.
Both big Crystal Palace against Leicester. Leicester are not playing well at the moment.
Leicester not
I
playing
haven't
well,
watched.
and that's-
I haven't
yeah.
watched enough of them to really diagnose it, but they are in a bad moment.
And yeah, and I agree, and that's why I've gone Crystal Palace, because I've watched it, admittedly the most I've ever watched of Crystal Palace of late. But I've been impressed with what Patrick Vieira's trying to implement there, the kind of football and the pace and the energy. And I think Leicester are struggling, and I can't pinpoint it, but I think that Crystal Palace will get it done. But I reckon this is the fixture. This is the fixture that might separate me and you. Liverpool, Man City at Anfield. I've gone Liverpool. You've gone Man City. Talk me through the thinking.
Yeah, look, I didn't really think about the home ground advantage. I might live to regret this one, but City are controlling games and snuffing out counterattacks in a way that they weren't last season, especially at the back end. So I'm impressed with Rodri particularly. I just think he's the stabilising presence there that they needed, and the heir to the Fernandinho throne of, subtle tactical fouls, which is always a good skill to have in your locker. I don't know. I think City are playing well. There's a few problems at Liverpool. They don't quite know what their best lineup is, and I don't know, they're just inconsistent and making defensive mistakes. I think City might exploit that.
And true to form, I've gone all vibes. I reckon the Cop, in front of the Cop. These games are always classics, don't forget. Liverpool, Man City are always amazing footballing occasions. But I think the home advantage in front of the Cop will carry Liverpool over the line. I think defensively, yes, a few things to worry about. But Mo Salah, when he rips that shirt off, you got to believe.
He's got to score a goal first.
100%. Well, Josh, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Rondo, episode 5 in the books. And as always, what are you looking forward to the most in this coming week?
I love the Champions League, as you know. I wrote a whole piece about how much I love the Champions League, and watching Craig Foster and Max Rushton analyse it. And PSG Man City on Wednesday morning. That might have already happened by the time this episode drops, but that is a tasty, tasty game. As long as you don't think about the kind of global sports, geopolitics, sports washing involved. And your boys, Sheriff Tiraspol up against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. That's the stuff dreams are made
Hey,
of.
sign me up for Moldovan citizenship. I'm all in on Sheriff.
But is it Moldova, though? Let's not get into that again.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to be visiting Sheriff anytime soon. Thanks for your time, Josh. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ryan. Love it.